10 seconds rolling.
Okay. But how do we gear it from
the mics are muted, so I don't know what you're saying.
I mean, just, it's great.
Do you want to time this yourself?
Oh, okay.
If you do, then you don't have to worry.
Okay, I'll time it myself.
30 seconds.
They haven't done it.
15 seconds coming up on the 3 shot and then going to Alan.
But it's like, I also can't relate to that because I've always just loved but I won't talk
10 seconds, mics will be unmuted.
Empowerment exercise. Hi, welcome back to New Realities. This is Alan Steinfeld, and I have back in the show some very interesting women who do a special program to transform their body, mind, and consciousness. It's called Exercise, Energy, and Exchange, and here are the 3 women here: Lara Lacharowitz, Lori Gregg, and Jess Galata. Okay, so we're going to get into more detail about what exactly these women do, and we'll pick it up sort of where we left off. But it's the whole concept, I think, of image in our culture. So let's start there. A lot of women I know, want to look a certain way because they need that attention. They want that attention, so they want to look like movie stars. Of course, that leads to things like anorexia. So you want to coach women and men to have a healthy self-image, right?
Yeah.
And so if someone comes to you and they say they want to look like Madonna, which I don't know why they would want to look like her, but let's say they do, where do you go with these people? How do you change their awareness of it's not out there, it's what's in here that feels and looks better for who you are?
Well, one of the things I think that Lori's probably dealing with the inner work, the actual inner subconscious work. But in terms of a fitness program and a nutritional program, what I tell people is a little bit about what those women do to look that way.
Right.
And one of the things that is very, very prevalent in really in the celebrity society is raw foodism, is juicing, and actually they do eat very, very healthily. And one of the things that's very interesting is that you can actually eat more food if you eat healthier foods.
I know.
So the calorie content of like vegetables and fruits and really healthier, whole grains is actually lower than if you were to eat the processed food that most of society is eating. However, it takes longer to prepare that type of food, and the interesting thing is that the celebs often have personal chefs and they have more time to work out. So what I'm always saying to people is if you do want to look that way, you can totally look that way, but this is what you have to do, because often I find that women are looking for me to say, oh, well, you can't, you couldn't look that way. And they're taking it, I don't know, there's some sort of message in terms of the media that might not be possible for them. But it totally is if they do want to do that, but they have to do what those ladies are doing.
But why would they, undercurrent of that is why do you want to look like that? What kind of brainwashing and conditioning, maybe we should talk to Lori, that feeds women and men in the culture to make them want to be something they're not, first of all, because everyone has different body types and structures. So what is the mechanism in our mass culture that affects us?
It's actually a shame. You can look at all different personality types, all different income levels. We all think we're not quite good enough.
Right.
And that just runs across the board. We're not quite good enough. And you know what? We all want to be right.
So how do we change that mindset? And the 3 of you will talk about it. I want to know, and I do this program because I want to tell people they are good enough.
Exactly.
Good enough for whatever they are.
When I work with people, and whether it is a body issue or being better at their sport or, getting ahead in their job, whatever it is, we go and look at, what's holding you back, and it's all the bad things. And then I say, I want to hear the good things about you. You know what most of them? Silence. They can't even name one good thing. So we have to dig a little deeper, and when you're nice and relaxed, you're a little more open. And I say, okay, who's your best friend? So maybe your best friend is Lara. So Lara, what would Lara say about you? Oh, then they can just name a list there.
Oh, I see.
So isn't that funny? You can't think of anything good for yourself, but your buddy could say all kinds of good things about you. So that's where we get started. You've got to start to recognize, oh yeah, I'm a great teacher. Oh yeah, I'm a wonderful mother.
Okay, so
that's the first step.
That's the first step, but it's not the last step. It's just the first step. So let's go a little deeper. Like you said, we started to say in the last program, what is that resistance to knowing ourselves and understanding our own consciousness?
You know, it's the perfect excuse. We always have the little, not quite good enough, oh, I'm too fat. Well, I'm too fat, and like I said earlier, and you didn't really agree, I'm too fat to go out on dates, so I'm safe. I'm safe from going out on dates. I'm too fat to go ask my boss for a raise because it's all those skinny girls that
So
get
you're
the raises.
saying this is self-talk.
Self-talk,
this
definitely
inner
self-talk.
dialogue. So,
but what rules our life?
It's what rules our life.
Self-talk.
So you get people to talk to themselves differently.
Exactly. And that's what Lara was saying earlier. When she's in the gym, instead of going, oh, I need to work on this, she's going, whoa, look at this part. And once you change the self-talk, you start to feel better about yourself. You have a better image, and it can be one word at a time.
Mm-hmm. But the self-talk, I mean, in cases, is not even conscious. We're not even conscious of that.
That's the problem.
So how do we get conscious of these ideas we have in
you
our
go to a really good hypnotherapist.
And
that's how
that's
you do it.
Lori is a really good hypnotherapist. Yes.
I was going to say, there's this one moment in one of her programs that sticks in my mind because it's so vivid. And it's not really, you're not unconscious at all. You're in this sort of state right before you go to sleep where your brain is just sort of a little fuzzy. Mm-hmm. And she asks you to imagine, and this is in terms of weight loss, but it's very clear, to have your quote-unquote fat self on one side and your thin self on the other side. And only then when you start to go, oh my God, I see how I think of myself in complete extremes, do you see, oh, I'm subconsciously choosing to think of myself this way. Mm-hmm. I had that experience before. I have always been heavy most of my life, but when I started working and doing meditation, I could finally see myself as a thin person. I ran a marathon. I lost 60 pounds.
And you lost 60 pounds using Lori's?
No, this was before I met them.
Wow.
And I gained it all back in about a year and a half.
Why?
Working 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah, but what was going on subconsciously? Because you were probably stressed and frustrated.
I was stressed. I was frustrated. I had no personal time. I was sitting behind a computer and a desk. I was a consultant. I had a lot of responsibility.
So how would you work with someone like this? Or how would you work with someone like that?
I would go directly to someone's values, what it is that they want for their life.
What did you value? What was up for you?
Well, that's part of the reason why I quit my job and became a life coach, because I would want to get out of my office. I mean, there were moments where I almost just stood up and walked out. And I finally said, I had to admit to myself that this is not how I want to live my life. And I wasn't taking care of myself. And
What made you admit that? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but that's such an important point, because in that point is like the shift. You had to admit to yourself you don't want this 9-to-5 job with all this money.
8 to 10 job.
So you
just
admit,
so you know,
even though you're probably getting
very,
very well paid, you had probably money, you just didn't have any time for yourself. Mm-hmm. But what was it that made that click that said, this is not what I want to do? Because people end up doing that for 40, 50, 60 years. How did you get out of it?
It was realizing that it didn't have to be that way, that I was completely attached to the story. I completely thought that I could see the rest of my life doing that. And I stopped and went, okay, if I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, where would I be? And I would be like, okay, I would have money, I would have a lot of status, blah, blah, blah. But I would not be happy. I wouldn't be honoring myself and really expressing myself, because that was a big piece of it.
But that's not important, because you'd have a job. No, I'm kidding. Well, you'd have a job and you'd have money and you wouldn't be out on the street. Your survival would be taken care of, but nothing else.
But part of it was I got really tired of listening to myself complain. I would have these conversations with my friend. It was over and over and over going, there were aspects of my job that I hated. I hated going down on the subway every morning, being there for 45 minutes, always I felt like I didn't have my own life.
Right.
And I realized that I was the only one who was in control of that. And part of it was through a lot of conversations. Mm-hmm. in these kinds of conversations.
You had a support that was saying to you, look, it doesn't have to be this way.
Exactly.
I mean, it was hard to tell that to yourself. You had to hear it from somewhere else.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so you did.
And it took a long time for me to hear that conversation, to start really believing that, really seeing that this is an option and this is a choice. And once I saw that it was a choice, then I couldn't stand with myself continuing to choose it.
How did you get that it was a choice? That's so interesting, as opposed to no choice.
It really has to do with conversation, and I think that's why coaching is so effective, because you start with the problem, you start with the topic, you start with I hate blah blah blah, or I can't whatever, I don't like this, or I'm having this issue, and then you start to look at what are the aspects that what's underneath that, what's really bothering you. Then you go, oh, I don't have time, I don't have blah blah blah, and you unpack it, and then all of a sudden you in the process of saying, well, what is it that what would be fulfilling to you? You recognize what's fulfilling to you. And I mean, in coaching, you sit there and you go, you have a lot of choices, and you start to see your choices. I could have easily stayed with my job, made some changes, and had a more fulfilling experience.
But
I wanted something more completely different.
You wanted to really be happy.
I wanted to be a coach because I looked at my life and said the part that I love about my job is the 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week with my client and the time I spend strategizing with my bosses. And that's fun. I am not a person to sit behind a computer. And I'm very good at my job. I was an executive director for a consulting firm, and I loved working with people. I love challenging people. I love helping them shift and see what their options are.
But you took a big step because you let go of everything and jumped into the unknown. You said, I'm going to let go of this high-paying job, and I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, I knew what I was going to do.
But you didn't know how that would come back to you as financially. Right? I mean, you had...
No, I mean, I thought about it, and I had saved some money, and I started my training right away, and I started working with clients right away.
Oh, I see. So you did start coaching.
I did.
So you had like a backup plan when you let go of that. But the key, I think, to start with anyone, women and men, is to see, okay, I'm not happy with what I'm doing.
I'm not a victim of circumstance.
Well,
That's fabulous.
You have to see that you're not a victim, as opposed to thinking, people who are victims don't even think they're a victim, they think this is the way it is.
That's my point. So then that's where you start having a conversation and going, well, what's true about that? What's not true about that? What's your expectation?
But even before they're saying that they're a victim or not, they have to say, well, something I'm not happy about. We have to start with, is this...
there's something I want to change in my life.
Yes, and they don't know what it is. Let's say they didn't know what it is. So
exactly. Most of my clients have... I am frustrated, I'm angry, or I want to do this, I don't know how to get there. And as human beings, we're all completely resourceful and whole. We know our own answers, we know our own selves, and most of our society, I realized this once when I was in graduate school, I was sitting there reading a magazine and I thought, oh my God, we have a society full of people telling us what to do, people telling us what's wrong with us. It's this self-talk, but it's reflected by our entire society. You look at the news, everyone's criticizing the president, everyone's criticizing the last president. It's all criticism. It's all what you do wrong, what you, etc. So if you can take a moment and actually sort of stop all that noise, and that's what we do in all of the work that we do. We stop the noise, we go back to right now, and focus on what you're doing right now, where you want to go, whatever it is. I mean, if in our context, it's about losing weight, but with everyone, is it, what's a fulfilling life to you?
So that's the ultimate goal, is what's the fulfilling life for you. So let's say, I mean, your case may have been easy, but if someone was saying, I like my job, I like my relationship, but I'm still not happy, they might want to have, like, Lori to go in and say, so how would you work with someone who seems to have a decent job?
When people come to me, they usually are unhappy.
They are.
You don't come to me when you're all happy and everything's great.
Okay.
Not very often.
As a hypnotherapist, they come to you as,
unhappy. And that is the thing. What are you unhappy about? So let's say it's somebody like, I just don't know.
Yeah, they just don't know.
So what it usually is, just a habitual way of thinking. So we go back once again. It may be back to childhood. It may be back to 5 years ago.
Right.
What happened? What was the incident that first made you unhappy?
Right.
Whenever time it was. And then the thing is, it may not have been any instance at all. It may have been, how did you respond to it when you were 8 years old? And you thought you were unhappy as an 8-year-old. But the funny thing is, we carry it with us year after
So
year.
how do we
after
undo
year.
that? Let's say something happened that, we had to, or in my case, actually, I moved from all the people I knew to like a whole unknown neighborhood. It was very traumatic, and I think there's a part that still needs to be healed about that. How would I do that?
Now, when you are relaxed doing hypnotherapy, so we would go back to that time that you
Okay,
moved.
let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm relaxed.
We'll do it after the session.
Okay,
here,
but
so
this,
it'll be
let's do
truly-
it.
But what we would do is go back to the time that you moved. And I would have you look at it vividly.
Okay.
Who said what? How did you feel? What did you have on? What and you can remember it
I felt
so
like I didn't
clearly.
have a choice.
Yeah, of course. Okay, you didn't feel you had a choice.
Yes.
And you were moved. They made you move.
They made it me.
Yeah, they made you
and
move.
I'm still
So
upset
no
about
control. No
Although-
control.
yeah.
Deprived.
Deprived, yes.
Yeah,
so how do you
all of
undo?
it.
Okay, yes.
So once you
Stop
do that,
rubbing it in. No, but it's okay.
but that's
Yes.
what we do. Then we go back, and you are like you do here for the show. You're going to be the director, the star, and the writer of your new way of thinking about the incident.
So So tell
And
me.
so you would go back. Now this is in a state of hypnosis.
Okay.
And you would go back and relive it. Just like you told me the way it was before, you would relive it. You make it up, but your only assignment is you have to be happy and laughing and giggling at the end of it.
So
But the
I
thing, you
relive
make
it in a way where it's not a trauma. I say, well, this could be a lot of fun for a new neighborhood and a
And
new
you
friend.
but
and
you know what you
I
do?
can do it already. It's happening. I'm letting go of
You
that
know what?
trauma.
But let me tell you something
Yes.
to make it stick.
Okay.
When you move to the new neighborhood, something really silly and funny, you see, it may be like a purple dog came up and like, I love you, I love you, I love you, because the dog could talk.
Oh, you make up
You know,
that part?
You make up that part.
You want me to make it up even
You
though it
make-
didn't happen?
That's what makes you remember. You make up some silly something. So when you think like, oh gosh, back then I had to move, and the first thought is that purple dog that could talk, and he just loved me.
But
That's what will come.
I
That's
feel a little weird
subconscious.
about
That's
that, though.
subconscious.
Because it didn't happen. I didn't see
Yeah,
people
but that's the
talk.
subconscious part. And that's when you're doing the hypnotherapy, that's when it works.
Because
Sitting
in
here
the
chit-chatting
environment
is like
of the-
coaching.
Yeah.
We're not my work is not coaching. It's getting into that subconscious. That responds totally differently than your conscious mind.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are skeptical about hypnotherapy
Yeah.
and what someone who does a hypnotherapy session is not going to have an immediate feeling. They're not going to wake up and go, oh, the sky is green or something. No, it usually takes a couple days or a week or so. You'll be doing something, and it's almost like, that sense of deja vu that people have. You're like, oh, you don't think about whatever it was that you think about in the same way. Lori works a lot with smokers, and they don't have that same desire when they see a cigarette again. It's like,
And how do they do that? Because you did
Well,
what?
once again, I have that's a little different exercise.
No, I
but
know,
we
but-
go back and relive an exercise where you see it differently.
Well, you
But once
see
again,
smoking cigarettes not as glamorous. You see it as
deadly. We get pretty.
You do that for
we
people?
do down
You
and
tell-
dirty with cigarette
You tell them
smokers.
it's like this cigarette's going to kill you at some point.
But yeah, I got my own little secret with that.
Okay. Well, you can share it because we're promoting you here.
Well, what's really interesting, though, with exercise, just to bring it back with that, is that once you have shifted the subconscious
Yes.
negative belief in
Yes.
and around your weight and
Yeah.
exercise, exercising then actually becomes fun.
Oh, so we start. So let's say we start here. We want to be conscious. We go here. We see what do we need to really work on that's keeping me stuck.
Yes.
And then you come along, Laura, and you say, okay, we're going to take this, we're going to put this into action, and we're going to get you in the best physical, energetic state to live your new life. So you're really giving people a new life on all levels of understanding. So, no, I like that. That's good. No, it's just about going
Everybody
into
feels better.
I feel better already because just going into that subconscious, just that little exercise, you see like, well, maybe there's, without even making things up, I can see there's like an excitement that I had about being more outdoors, not being in the city, that that was a positive benefit. So you were saying in the last show about what is the positive benefits of those negative emotions. Is that where we were left off with you?
The thing is, we get benefits from what we complain about.
Oh, yeah, go into that.
That's what we've got to take a look at. And once again, we were looking at the bodies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you fat? Do you have a small penis? Do you have small breasts? You know, what are you complaining about?
So what if they are complaining about that? Not that I am.
No, I know you wouldn't. But if you're complaining about that, how do you benefit?
How do you benefit from the complaint?
How do you benefit from the complaint? Exactly.
So how do people benefit from the complaint?
And, you know, if it's a sexual organ, that's a lot about dating and you feeling uncomfortable dating. I'll start dating. I'll be more sexy in bed once my body, my penis or my breast is just how I want. Once I lose the weight, then I'll go and help my son's, 4-H club go on the hiking trip. But subconsciously you think, I don't know how to hike. I can't start a fire with sticks together. Our excuses, our complaints are just, it's an excuse for something.
Mm-hmm.
It's go ahead.
Yeah.
A lot of women who are heavy don't want to lose weight because they wouldn't recognize themselves. They wouldn't know if they're attractive. They can either be afraid of the attention and not know how to react, or once they're there, it's a very safe place for women to go. How do I want to say this? If I stay the way that I am, I don't have to risk rejection. But more than that, I know that I'm not as good as her because I look like this. Mm-hmm. But if you take that excuse away from me, I don't know if I'll be her equal. Mm-hmm. So it's safe for me to stay that way.
And let me just ask you, do you see this in the exercise, the women that you work with who aren't trying because they don't want that? You get like tuned into that and see their resistance?
Yeah.
You say, go back to Jess before you come back to me? No.
Well, let's just say it's really wonderful. I get to work with the physical. Well, I'm working always with the mental, emotional, and subconscious when I'm working with someone. Yeah. And now the job is not completely on my shoulders.
Right.
And the tools that these ladies use to actually uncover the resistance and the blockage helps me dramatically with what I'm doing, because then exercise does not become a chore. And what's really interesting about our society, too, is that you know the phrase, no pain, no gain. And it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't
in fact,
have to be
it shouldn't be that way.
Exercise class?
No.
Isn't that what they use in gyms?
Absolutely. And the thing is that if it is painful, you're actually harming and hurting yourself.
That's good to know.
It's really true. If you've exercised and the next day you're actually sore, and you think that was a good workout because you were sore, you have actually torn. You have got micro tears in your muscle tissue.
Is that why people are sore?
Yes, and now you're having an immune response. It is not good for you.
I thought it's good. It builds your muscles if you're sore. It doesn't?
No, you can actually hypertrophy, which means hypertrophy.
I mean, build up the muscle
without being sore.
You can.
In fact, that just means that you are increasing the resistance to your workout within your workouts at a pace that is actually really healthy. Versus if I gave you, if someone starts with me and I gave them a 25-pound dumbbell to curl, they're going to be sore the next day. But if I start out with 5 pounds and then the next week I go to 8, the week after that I go to 10, I have micro-progressed them in a way that their body can then handle. I mean, this weight is a stress, right? And it's a stress like the cell phone stress or like a chemical stress. But if you're giving our body the stress in little increments that it can handle, then you're adapting the body's ability to handle the stress over time. And that is actually the healthy, most effective way to work out. See, the problem is, who wants to go back to the gym and work out when they feel like, sore the next day? Well, it's just abusive.
But unless Lori gives them some subconscious motivation
it still wouldn't
to
be
do
good.
that.
Even with subconscious motivation, it wouldn't be good.
So let's say there are women or men even out there that would like to work with you, and they're watching this, but they are saying, there's some resistance, saying, I like what these people are saying, but I just don't know how to do that. How do you get to people to make changes in their life? I mean, how would you tell people? I mean, of course they have to come towards you, but how do you get those people resistance to change? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Well, one of the things that I make people aware of, first of all, I mean, a lot of times people aren't even aware of what they want.
Yes.
They're also not aware of how they feel.
Right.
And so it's interesting, when I asked you the question, you had to think about it. Well, my energy is like what? I guess it's like a 5 today. Sometimes I'm a 10, but I'm a 5. Well, we don't even realize that we're actually feeling crappy. We don't realize the things that actually may stress our systems. And so when you actually give somebody a chance to feel better, you know, you do these few exercises that we did earlier, and you go, wow, I actually felt a lot better doing that. And somebody actually tries on the product, and they're like, wow, I really like driving this new car. I like feeling this energized. Then they know that that's what's possible all the time. And they don't have to drink a coffee to get it.
But the key, I think, to what you're saying is check in on how you're feeling first. Let's see. Are you tired? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to have more energy? And ask yourself honestly those questions, and then see that there's actually ways to make changes in your life.
Absolutely. What do you want?
What do you want?
And one of, I think, Lara's real gifts is that she works with people who have some form of injury. And I think a lot of people who are injured just think it's all over. Right? I'm never going to be able to look that way, exercise that way, a lot of things, especially athletes, especially runners. Once they injure themselves, once the knees go, they think it's all over and they're never going to be able to do that. And her kind of exercise strengthens the body and holistically increases the energy for the immune system so that people are not, they relate to stress in a completely different way. And we adapt what we're doing to the individual in that sense, so that it really applies to everyone.
So then we'll just take it back and kind of pull it all together here and say, so people who want to feel better or feel about themselves better, that's something they're conscious of. But when they come to Lori, it's like, I just don't know what it is, then you activate that for you. So
that's what we get to. So most people don't feel good, and they can come to me, you know, and sometimes they know, oh, I hurt my knee.
Yeah.
But like you said, sometimes they have no idea, and that's what we get to. And all you have to do is discover what it is.
So people can really count on a whole person approach here.
Absolutely.
They really can. You can really almost guarantee that there's going to be change in people's lives if they want the change.
Right.
If they want it, yes.
Yeah.
And some people want it, but they don't. Now, how do we get people beyond that point, just as we kind of wrap up here?
I think that's where I come in. It's over time, if someone's not doing something, that becomes what we coach on. You say this, but your actions are not doing this. So do you really want this? And if you do, then what are your choices? If you don't, what are your choices? What are you going to choose?
Okay. And then sometimes you send them to Lori and say, okay, Lori,
well,
let's
we work with the same person, so it's a constant progression.
I mean, would you like one person come to you and you would then confer among yourselves and say, okay, this is what's really going on, even though she's not saying here, I think I'll work with them there energetically. Or, I mean, do you do that? Do you really
Absolutely.
have
Yes.
this?
I mean, everyone's
That's the
mind, right?
benefit.
Everybody's mind, body, and spirit, right? And we also are our past, we are our present, and we're living into our future. So we're dealing with all those aspects of self. So if it's kind of like if one of us can't tap into them, somebody in the group will be able to.
But that's really great because you all have these different skills, and then you can look at that person, because most people, they just look at it through their little slot. But if you have this comparative holistic approach, you can say, this is what's going on, this and this and this.
And one really important thing I want to say very quickly is the reason why we all believe working in groups is so important is because women coming together to work in a group to lose weight, it's very easy for one person, for example, I can come to you and talk to you and then I go back to the exact same environment. And I am not going to change my patterns if I'm going back to the exact same environment. So by working in a group with all of us, we are also helping them change their own environment.
Wow.
So that they're not just doing this in an isolated vacuum. I mean, we all know that experience. I'm sure people in the audience have done things like that, where you go to a class, you learn something, you go right back to your environment, and you forget it. So the reason why, that's why we want, our focus is working with women in a group, because they have new friends, you change your conversations, you meet new people, and it's really a holistic approach.
Wow, great. So the name of the organization is?
Empowerment Exercise Exchange.
Empowerment Exercise Exchange with Lara, Lori, and Jess. And that's their website, empowermentexerciseexchange.com. And when's your next program happening?
March 2nd.
Well, I don't know if the show will be on March, but they can just look at the website for upcoming programs.
Continuous programs.
Well, thank you. This has been really good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for having us.
And all the other people listening. Thanks. This is Alan Steinfeld for New Realities, and email me at newrealities@earthlink.net or check my website, newrealities.com. Thanks. It was good.
Cool.
Did you get everything, all the points?
Yeah.
Let me just see what's happening.
So this won't air till after March 2nd.
Probably, because